What a
Hey, Jack.
win. What a game for Duke, beating North Carolina. JD, you were a game early. You were calling for the beatdown against NC State. The timing was just a little bit off, but you almost had it. This game was a game for all of, I don't know, a couple of minutes. And then Cooper Flag took over. And then it was a Duke domination from that point on. And North Carolina, at the end of the game, they did go on a run, but it started when Duke was up by 31, so there just wasn't enough time for this to turn into anything close. This started off as the Cooper Flag show, and then everyone got involved. It was a total team effort for Duke, and we're going to go through that first segment from Cooper Flag in just a moment. But JD, just your quick takeaway. What's one thing from this game?
It feels really good that our revenge tour, especially against UNC, we're now 3-0. And, I think that for all the statistical reasons, the size advantage, you had this game laid out the right way in our preview. But because of our last two games going the way they did, very reluctant, to put my foot in the water and say beat down here. But after the first segment, this was just never a game.
Never a game. And all right. Well, I guess to your point, based off of how the last two games went, I was also afraid to call this. Like, on paper, this is what it should be, but because of the rivalry, because of how the last couple games have gone, North Carolina State being one of the worst three-point shooting teams, they shot I don't want to curse, but you know what I'm trying to say. And it was incredible. So I was like, well, North Carolina, not a great three-point shooting team, giving up a lot of size, but I'm sure this will be just one of those games where they hit their threes and they can score in transition. And everything on paper played out the way you would think, just looking at stats and how the matchups worked out. But I think a lot of the reason why it unfolded the way it did is because of how dominant Cooper Flag was in those first 4 or 5 minutes and the way he set the tone for Duke and just the rest of this basketball game, because I think he gave life to his teammates and he took it away from North Carolina with how he started the game. So let me just break that down, and then you can go ahead, JD, with your thoughts. So it starts off with a nice, drawn up play. We've actually seen this before, where Cooper has the ball at the top of the key, Sion off the ball like it's like a slip screen, rolls to the basket, easy dunk. North Carolina actually runs a similar play. It's 2-2. Cooper ends up getting fouled. He goes to the free throw line. He misses both free throws. And the broadcast starts talking about how Cooper Flag's sick. He hasn't been feeling well the past few days, right? They go into this whole thing. Okay. Then Kaman Malawach gets a 2 consecutive tip outs, like that Tyson Chandler, that classic tap back to your teammate, which led to a Cooper Flag 3. So he misses the 2 free throws. He hits a 3. Then the next play, they try a backdoor pass to, I believe it was Trimble. Cooper Flag steal. Finds Sion James for another dunk. All right. Then Cooper Flag gets the ball. They send a double team. He finds Tyrese Proctor in the opposite corner. 3-pointer. Next play. Cooper Flag. Steal. Live ball turnover. He finds Proctor for the dunk. And I just realized it wasn't a Sion James dunk. It was a nice layup and on a tight passing angle from Cooper to Sion on that fast break. And then Proctor finds Cooper Flagg with that trail three at the top of the key. And all of the first 15 points, which was a 15-6 run to start the game for Duke, were counted by Cooper Flagg, whether that was assists or him scoring. He had 6 points and 4 assists in the first 5 minutes of the game and 2 steals for good measure. It was just a remarkable way to start a game, in a game where you would think maybe he would be feeling the pressure. He's a freshman. We've learned anything about Cooper Flagg, pressure doesn't bother this guy. I don't really know what does. He's been incredible. And I just before you go, I have to start finding new adjectives, because I think incredible, magnificent, phenomenal, it doesn't, for whatever reason, it just doesn't do justice to how great he has been.
Look, if you can deliver that kind of a knockout punch in what could have been a really good rivalry game, quick play by Coop to Sion, and then they had a great similar play. It was 2-2, and you might have thought we were in for an interesting game. 15-6, and then, by the way, right after the break, Coop drives and one, and it's 18-6. So 3 more points credited to Coop, and the game was basically over. We kept texting each other saying, that's another segment in which we're dominant, and another one. And so, leading to a 47-25 halftime. And you just knew UNC couldn't recover. It was 22-point lead at the half. Game finished with, I think, a 17-point lead, and a lot of good shout outs to our fans, our listeners. A lot of them had this as a 20-point win roughly, and I got to give them a lot of credit for that. Both of us were a little timid to do that, and they were not. They were true blue Duke fans and said, we're going to win strong. So very interesting, in a lot of love to our fans there.
Yeah, if you were one of those people, drop it in the chat. This is a good time for you to say I was right, because this was a dominant performance. And the one thing I wanted to add, yes, Cooper Flagg, gets the and one right after, we come back from commercial break. But how did he get that and one bucket in transition? Malik Brown comes back for Duke within 10 seconds, and that's being generous. He had his first deflection and steal of the game. And that's the one thing that Coach Shire had talked about, and is something I picked up on, is that, yes, Malik Brown's defense, his ability to be disruptive, is important for us defensively, but it also helps us offensively, because we can get easier buckets in transition, and it just helps everybody find an offensive rhythm. And I don't think it was a surprise, or I don't think it was a coincidence, is a better word, that today Duke's offense was excellent, because not only did Malik Brown do that, but he also had a couple of assists today. He moves the ball really well from the center spot. He's a great passer, and he found Khan on one of his early threes. He's just a really important piece for this Duke team, and Gangba has been really good in his minutes since Malik hasn't been available. But it's just great to have Malik Brown back.
Amen. It was nice, and he didn't show any signs of hesitation, and he looked very comfortable back on the court. So, in classic Duke fashion, maybe he was ready to go 2 games ago, but they held him out, and he was absolutely ready for the rivalry game. So I thought it would go to the Illinois game. They wanted him back for the rivalry game, and he was a very important piece tonight. As you say, just he makes so many deflections. It's as if there are magnets in his hand. That they could. He just seems to be on the ball all the time. But as you pointed out in the past, he was the defensive player of the year in the Big East. And so,
I don't
in
know.
the
ACC. I don't know if he was ACC.
Yes,
I don't know if
Syracuse.
he was defensive player of the year. He was all defense.
All A's.
Yeah, and he led. I think he led the conference in steals, or he was like second last year for Syracuse. He's just an unbelievable. I would use a different term. It feels like he's an octopus, because it's like his arms are everywhere. It seems like there's more of them than there should be. And my favorite thing with watching Malik Brown defensively is when a guard is switched onto him and they think they may have an advantage, and they just don't. It just gets worse. You think you're in a better spot. You don't have Proctor on you, but now you've got Malik Brown. It's just a nightmare.
And then another thing was how everybody contributed. Come on, Malowich, okay? He often, if you notice how many times he's out on top guarding. There was a couple of times he was on RJ. There was a couple of times on Kudo. I don't know what you're thinking when you're that small, though. I do give RJ Davis just a lot of credit for the three-pointer he put up over the reach of come on. That was a great shot.
I hate to say this because we are Duke fans. It was reminiscent of the shot. Obviously not the same magnitude, but the shot that Caleb Love hit in the Final Four over Mark Williams. I hate to say that, but then the next play,
just great.
Next play, Malowich, RJ was dancing. He was putting the ball through his legs. Couldn't get any separation. Overall, Malowich continues to do a great job guarding on the perimeter, and then he did exactly what he should have in this game against a smaller North Carolina team. He may not have had the most rebounds in the game. I think, I'm just checking the stats, he finished with 6 rebounds. But he had 4 offensive rebounds, and a lot of those were early when it was kind of demoralizing. Like North Carolina would play good defense. Malowich would just reach over somebody, tap it back out, get the rebound, and then it would start over again.
Or he didn't get the rebound, but he would tip the ball and keep the ball in play, which probably doesn't show up as a rebound, but because someone else is grabbing the ball. But he was so active. His footwork was so incredible for a 7'2" guy that he too is, I think, is that collective set of pieces that makes Duke so formidable. Though it will be interesting as Auburn continues to play their strength of schedule, and how Johni Broome continues to, and really they are matched up in stats really closely, but Johni Broome for Auburn is doing it against a much higher caliber of opponents. So, but all right, Jack, why don't you take us through the stats for tonight?
Just quickly, because I think I know what you're talking about, but you didn't necessarily say it directly. In that, when you said they have similar numbers, you're talking about Cooper, Johni Broome in terms of player of the year. Is that where you're going?
No, similar numbers. Total
Duke
points.
in Auburn?
No. Johni Broome and Cooper Flag. And that Cooper is averaging like 19.9 points a game. Johni is at like 18 something. Rebounds, Janai has a slight edge. They really are very, very close. And while there's so much attention, the reason that I bring it up, there's so much attention placed on Cooper Flag, and Auburn just continues to win against the best competition. And he himself, Janai Broom, has been involved in the clutch moments of their games. But enough on that. Let's just go right to the stats here, because there's a lot to break down.
Two guys we haven't given their flowers yet so far, and we're going to do it right now. Knueppel, who, especially after the first 5 minutes, was spectacular tonight. He was Duke's leading scorer. He finished with 22 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and they even credited him with a block. Part of the reason he was so good today is because he was able to get to the basket, which I think really gets him in rhythm and helps him score. Like, overall, it helps his game. Just because North Carolina, Van Allen Lubin did have a sequence where he blocked 2 shots in a row, but
absolutely,
they did finish with 6 blocks in the game, but they just don't have that interior presence and the size overall. And so when Khan was able to get past his first guy, he was able to get all the way to the bucket 80% of the time, which really got him going. And not only was he, that's kind of where he started, but then the passing, like, he was able to find guys, in different areas of the court, just doing a really good job of something that early on the year he did a lot more. As the year went on, it became, Cooper doing a lot more of the playmaking, but it was nice to see Khan get back into that part of his game tonight. And then Tyrese Proctor, 17 points in this one. He had a couple boards, 3 assists. Another great defensive game from Proctor. Was aggressive early and hit his shots. A couple of his misses were late and didn't really matter. So it looks like 5 of 10, 2 for 5. Good shooting, 50%, 40%. But when the game mattered, it was actually even better than that. I thought just a great performance from Proctor today versus North Carolina.
So let's go back to Khan for a minute. The first segment of the first half, we knew we were going to win. The only time you ever sort of wonder about that is what happens in the first segment of the second half. And in that first segment of the second half, Khan just was dominant. He had 9 points in the first segment and then scored the first 2 at the beginning of the second segment after they came back on the court for 11 points. 11 of his 22 occurred right in there. And again, another stake in the heart of any effort to come back by. I mean, at that point, I think it was after the second one, it was 62-34. The lead had ballooned to 28 at that point, and it was 22 at the half. And that was on really Khan's shoulder. He was just phenomenal. Yes, we won by 17. Yes, the lead was 30, 31, but it just never was a game.
No. And the only other starter we haven't talked about so far, Sion James, who had a really good game, scoring inside, knocked down a 3, had 3 assists and a steal. Just a really solid effort from Sion James again, who's just been so dependable and consistent for this Duke team throughout the year, and has been exactly what Duke needed out of, their starting guard spot. I guess he's the point guard, but it's like it's kind of it's positionless, right? Like, yeah, he's the guy who brings the ball up, but we all know the offense goes through Cooper Flag and then Knueppel. But Sion's ability to guard multiple positions has been vital for Duke's defense because of how much they like to switch. And he just does a good job of doing a lot of the little things to help Duke win games consistently.
To round out the stats, what was Coop's line today?
He had 21 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 steals, and 2 blocks. I did make a note at halftime. So he had 13 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. A lot of his damage was done in the first half. And from what we know about Cooper Flagg, it's that when the team needs it the most is when he tends to, perform the best. And so it's no surprise to me that going into halftime up by 22, his numbers weren't necessarily the best in the second half because the team didn't need it, especially after, to your point, Knueppel had those 11 early points that really kind of separated the two teams. And if there was any hope of a North Carolina comeback, Knueppel made sure to kind of squash that pretty quickly early in the second half. Going through the bench, go ahead.
No, I was just going to make certain that I could somehow, I'm trying to figure out, looking at the crazies, I'm trying to figure out which movement is the way to express my elation at this beatdown of UNC after 2 losses last year. So I really think I want to thank the Duke players. It was a very pleasant gift to all us Duke fans. And in the Duke UNC rivalry, UNC's going to have a long bus ride home for those
15 minutes.
11 miles, 8 as the crow flies, and they'll go back a little more humbled in that rivalry. So, all right, go through. We're going to take us through some of the bench players.
Yeah, so we talked about Malik Brown, a couple points, couple assists, 3 rebounds, 2 steals. Mason Gillis hit his 1 3-pointer today. Thought he was just fine. Caleb Foster did have, I don't know what, something weird happens at the end of the games when I clip the stats here, because it's showing up as he had 12 offensive rebounds. He did not have 12 offensive rebounds.
No, he did not.
I'm not sure what happens at the end sometimes with these ESPN stats.
And if anything, as the announcer said, it would be nice. John Shire wants to get him moving, Caleb. And I think maybe, unfortunately, it was yet another game that he really didn't find his rhythm. So plenty of time. We still need him for a run. He's still an important part of this. And but there were so many other stars tonight.
Right. And here's the thing with Foster and with Evans to an extent. It's not so important that they come out and consistently, score 10 points every time off the bench. That's not what it's about for them. It's about one game, whether it's, the Sweet 16, hopefully we get there, or maybe even the Elite 8, right? It's going to be one game where Caleb Foster scores 8 points, and he's got a couple of big buckets, right? And that's going to be the moment for Caleb Foster from this season. It's not necessarily about how many points he scores in each game. And so for me, I thought today he didn't score again, but I thought he had a nice drive to the basket. The Wake Forest game was the biggest concern for me. He turned down a shot. He looked very tentative. I thought he's looked a little bit better the past couple games. Offensively, still think defensively, there are times where he kind of misses a rotation or something. But listen, we're going to need him in a game. Don't know what game that is, but we're going to need him in a game.
I think that's your point also about Isaiah Evans, because Isaiah Evans made his name for himself in the Auburn game with 6 3-pointers in the first half. And I think you're absolutely right that we're going to want uh, people like Caleb and Isaiah to be able to contribute uh, when called upon, and that's why Shire keeps getting him out on the court. Isaiah, by the way, had a really good defensive steal. Um, Picked
Well,
his pocket. It was great.
I'm glad you said that because I think Evans like defense and his effort on that end of the court, like throughout this year, early on, when he'd come into some games, you can kind of see why Coach Shire was like reluctant to play him in the big games. But as the year has gone on, I think his defense and his effort. I also this could be completely wrong, but I also think he looks like he's put on like 5 or 10 pounds. Like he looks a little bit. Maybe it's just the shirt. I don't know, but he looks a little bit stronger. I think he's been much better on that side of the court. And today he hit one of two threes. It was a nice one. The first one, I don't know
The
if you
first
noticed.
one was just
It was a bad shot. I don't know if you noticed, but before that, they passed it to him in the corner, and he was trying to shoot it, which wouldn't have been a good shot, but he fumbled the ball, and then he had a steal on Trimble before he got his steal later on, and then he just lost it out of bounds, and to me, it looked like a guy who's having some North Carolina jitters, and then he got his shot later on and was able to hit it. I think
I'm gonna disagree. I don't think it's so much jitters when it comes to Isaiah Evans. You know how some players are catch and shoot? He's shoot and catch. He is already in motion. I mean, that release on his first three was like, all right, calm down a bit, Isaiah.
that's okay. That that was normal Isaiah Evans. That's not what I'm talking about. That's just who he is. We're at this point we're pretty accustomed to if you pass him the ball, it's going up. It's on the responsibility is on the person passing it to Isaiah Evans as to whether or not he will shoot a good shot. The reason I say jitters is because a couple plays before he caught it in the corner and didn't catch the ball. Like he didn't catch it cleanly to get up his quick shot. So I think maybe we're just talking about different plays more than anything. But it's that's part of our program. We disagree, and that's the fun of sports. We can watch the same game and have entirely different opinions. The last thing, because I've gone on for a few minutes here on Isaiah Evans, I don't know if you caught this, but I think Isaiah Evans's like energy is like infectious, and there is I think it was early in the second half in part of his run. He had a 3-pointer. RJ Davis like came out to contest it. He passed it, I think, to Cooper, and then went in and posted up RJ Davis. And when he did that, you could see Isaiah Evans in like the bottom corner of the screen, like stand up and start clapping because he knew it was a mismatch. And he was all excited over there. And then when Evans hit his three, before he could even celebrate, because we know he likes to celebrate. Cooper was doing Evans' celebration. Come on, had his like 3 fingers over his face, so you could like they just enjoy Isaiah Evans' energy, which I think is just great to have on this Duke team.
I think the chemistry among all the players is actually remarkable given their pathway to Duke.
Yes.
That it's a heavily recruited class of 5-star players. It is 3 through the portal that have been just incredible additions between Mason Gillis, Malik Brown, and Sion James. It is the 2 guys from last year, and they have found a way to blend together that I think is probably, yes, it's Cooper Flagg, but second to me is going to be that chemistry and that ability to help each other if they're going to go on that 6-game winning streak that is March Madness.
And I think to that point, it helps when your best player is somebody like Cooper Flag, who he's not like a typical, number one scorer on a team. Like, yes, he's the leading scorer on this Duke team, but a lot of the stuff that he does really well, like it's like his hustle, his ability to like help his teammates. It's all of the other stuff.
The only I completely agree with that, but I want to point out that one of the things you did in our private text chat to each other during the game was at the 5 minutes to go, he was starting to do too much. He was trying to, I don't know if he was just trying to pad his point total there at that point, but it was only at the final 5 minutes when the game was won that he started to do that. I thought there was a great opportunity really to empty the bench. Were there any other players that got, Patrick Amba did get a couple of minutes. Anyone else show up as getting a minute? I thought
apparently Darren Harris did get in at the end.
Yes.
But I think, unfortunately, I'll share. My only critique of Cooper Flag was during that stretch around the 5-minute mark left in the second half. He had a few bad possessions in a row. And I said my only critique of Cooper Flag is that this stretch is going to prevent Mr. Hubbard from getting some minutes against North Carolina. That's how good Cooper Flag is. I don't, Let me go to the medals for today, and then we'll read the chat. And then at any time, JD, if you've got some comments, feel free to interject. So, gold medal today, Cooper Flag. Should I just say gold medal? Should we forget the gold medal moving forward? I just run out of words.
I think he earned it because of his complete play.
Yes.
It's not just, it's not like did he score this number of points. It's that he was responsible for that early round knockout, which gave everyone confidence. And so I completely agree that it's not just that we say Cooper Flag, it's that Cooper Flag absolutely earns the gold medal in each game.
And speaking of confidence, the silver medal, Knueppel. See what I did there? So, he was just as good. It just wasn't at the start of the game when it was like that knockout punch. Oh, I don't know about knockout punch, but it certainly put North Carolina behind the 8 ball, and they just were never able to make it a game. After that, Knueppel was awesome.
In that second segment of the first half, he did have a 3 and a 2, so you saw him absolutely feeding off of Cooper's momentum in that game. So he does truly deserve the silver. And by the way, you said confidence. And if you notice, the crazies had signs up that had construction. I like confidence a lot more.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of, I don't know if you saw this, but on the social media, a lot of the crazies like tents were puns based on con. I think it's an easy name to use. There were some common puns as well. Didn't see as many flag.
Although I pointed out to you, there was that one really cool sign that was in the crazies where it says, "I pledge allegiance to the flag," with 2 G's. And I thought that was very clever. I love that. And by the way, Khan's 4 younger brothers were in attendance for this one along with his parents. It was clearly family day there. And one of our favorite Duke NBA players was sitting, I think, pretty close to in the first couple of rows. The player we lost from last year's team.
Mr. Jared McCain, who must have felt good for McCain because I got to say, he played really well in both North Carolina games last year. The team really didn't. And until he got hurt, he was, one of the top 3 guys for Rookie of the Year this year. That's how good he was for a struggling Sixers team. All right, let me wrap up the medals. Bronze.
Silver. Bronze.
Well, we did that.
Yeah.
Bronze is Tyrese Proctor. I've been calling for it for the past couple games. He delivered today. He was just excellent, and the shots fell today. His defense has been good every game. Just the shots were falling today, and then I felt like they would eventually because he was taking good shots, and it was just a matter of time. And today happened to be the night for Mr. Proctor. But with how well Duke played, there was a number of guys who I think deserve, honorable mentions. Sion James, Kama Malawach, Malik Brown, I think all deserve honorable mentions. It's just you had 3 guys who were just outstanding, and it was going to be tough to make it to the podium in this one.
I like it's funny. I love the way Proctor plays defense, and the only thing from his stance, with both hands always ready to try to get to the ball, I'm waiting for him to slap the floor once in homage to Bobby Hurley, but we'll see.
This was the first time this year that we got a chance on TV to see like the intros, and after their intro they all like slapped the floor. I don't know if you caught that. I don't know if that's something that they do regularly or they did it today, because this was the first time we got to see it. There's something to know. Okay.
Normally we're watching fake golf.
I teed you up for that one. Okay. All right, let's go to the chat. Ryan Jones, he said this early on when we were talking about Malik Brown. Malik Brown is an absolute intangible piece for us this year. Team is so much better on both ends.
Solid comment.
And honestly, when we did the preview, I guess it's something that to kind of give us a little bit of benefit of the doubt, we did not think Malik Brown was going to play in this game when we did the preview. Didn't even based off of Coach Shirer's comments, I put it at like 10%. And then the way it was going, I was like, maybe 25%. But boy, was he good today. Walter Rollerson. I didn't watch the game. Why no changes first? They aren't big enough. Then they can't shoot. Then Hubert doesn't know what to do. If he has any pride, he'll leave. I don't think Carolina will fire Hubert. All right, well, clearly a North Carolina fan. So one thing we didn't talk about, well, we talked about like in our chat, our text, was that he did make an adjustment. It just seemed to be late, which was he started playing bigger. And he started to do that towards the end of the first half.
I give him credit for 3 adjustments. 1, he played bigger. 2, he tried out a zone to see if that would work. And then he certainly tried a full court press. And yeah. I give him credit for saying, I don't know what's going to work. But so I actually think that he didn't just sit there and say, we're going to lose. He did try to do the best with what he had. So
yeah, I think he did try things. I just think he should have started trying them sooner. He didn't really start experimenting until at least 10 minutes into the game. So I think that would be the critique of Hubert, Mr. Davis today, who, let's face it, he was, I think, 4-3 against Duke coming into today. Like, he's done a pretty good job coaching against Duke. It's the roster this year, and you can't blame anybody other than him, right? That's how this goes. No one. It's not like there's a GM who makes your team. The coach makes your team. So he's not had the best roster construction this year. And shout out Drake Powell, who just made this. It was one of the other reasons why Spencer Hubbard couldn't get on the court. He had 12 points in like the last 10 minutes of this game. Started scoring all over the place. Lastly, Lawrence Freeman, long-time loyal listener, Mr. Freeman, chiming in. If we can bottle that effort and energy, we're going to be real tough to beat this year. Yeah, agreed. Oh, and Lawrence also says Hubert Davis was just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks in the second half. Yeah, I agree. 2-3 zone, get the biggest bench players he could find and just throw them in there. I agree. I think to his credit, he was just trying to see what could work. He was just running through different ideas. They did go on a run to end the game. I just think it was in part because Duke's intensity had certainly fallen off after being up by, I think, as much as like 31 at one point in the second half.
Right. But I would say to Lawrence, he was the first one to get this conversation going with you and I, which is, all right, that's 11 in a row in ACC. And Jack, you say the real test and the hardest matchup will come in the ACC next Saturday, I think, at Clemson.
Yes.
Who's playing really good.
And Clemson did win today. So I'm hoping that both teams win their games earlier this week. I'm assuming Clemson has one. Clemson is 10-1 in conference play. They will be taking on Georgia Tech. Let's see. Tuesday. Duke plays Syracuse Wednesday. So I hope both teams win, setting up an awesome matchup at Clemson. But we're one game at a time. The other thing we should credit Lawrence for is the Revenge Tour, which Duke is now 3-0 on the Revenge Tour. They've got 2 more games, North Carolina and Wake Forest. And then you never know, ACC tournament. And based off of how the last 4 years have gone, I guess you never know who you could see in the NCAA tournament with Duke having played NC State and North Carolina. We're not going to talk about the results of those games, but they have seen them in the NCAA tournament. And anything else you want to add before we wrap up the show here?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of Cooper of Maine.
Cooper of Maine. What? And you want to know what? I'm glad you said that. Watching Cooper flag this year has been such a treat. And I think it's something we all know as Duke fans, we get these guys for 1 year. And some guys are a little bit more special than others. And he certainly is in that elite class of one-and-done freshmen. And he may just end up being the best of them all. And I just, the reason I say that is let's not take this for granted and appreciate each game we get to watch Cooper flag. And so with that being said, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, it helps us grow, share it with your Duke basketball friends, and we will be back Monday for the Duke versus Syracuse preview. So make sure to tune in for that. We'll have that preview up on YouTube along with podcast form. So if you prefer to listen on your way to work, we'll have it available for you that way. We'll see you guys.
Or, Jack, their way to classes.
Or their way to classes. Or if you're just on your way to, the store, you're on your way to, to the gym, wherever you're going, we'll be available for you. So we'll see you guys on Monday.